All right, so welcome to the end of our notes, hopefully, of this whole extended unit. So we just ended with figuring out kind of the guiding question. So back to our driving question was, why is the wolf population fluctuating? So remember, fluctuating means those ups and those downs, those increases and those decreases. So clearly with the the wolves specifically, we see a lot of these ups and downs, increase, decrease, increase, decrease, increase, decrease, increase, decrease, like they're everywhere. Um, so what we learned is that overall there's a lot of different reasons for this, but remember we still not be able to know the exact reason. So yesterday we took notes on what these reasons were, and I'm just here to remind you that we might not be able to pinpoint exactly what is causing them, but it is happening. So we have a pretty decent understanding of our model. You guys totally got it that an increase means that they're having babies, there's births, and a decrease means that there's deaths. So now we're going to expand on our knowledge. Remember, I told you that a case study, so for example, this Isle Royal about these moose and these wolves, now we're going to take this knowledge and expand it to other ecosystems, other animals around the world or in our own like area. So we're taking this specific example and now using it to broadly help us explain changes in wolves and other animals over time throughout areas. But we know that there are still some things we cannot explain. So going back to extinction, I know this was a while ago, but like, what do you guys now think it means to go extinct after everything we've learned? Maybe we need to go back and revisit our definition. So depending on the class and depending on what you guys wrote down on what our definition of extinction is, let's go back and let's revisit it. We've seen now that the gray wolves on Isle Royal are in like some serious trouble. And I told you I do have an update, which we'll get to later. But if you look at the end of this graph, there's like 2 of them left. But were the gray wolves ever in danger of going extinct? Like, why or why not? Like, I want you to think about this and we will talk about what it means. Like, before this time in this graph, was there ever a time when they were in danger of going extinct? So before like 2013 era. So maybe it's different about gray wolves in general. So here it says, record your thoughts in doodle box 7. You're probably like, we finished our notes. So I'm going to show you where these notes are. It's all the way back to our extinction notes. So I'm in class 1B just for the example here. And if you go all the way down, I'm going to even have to find it. So right here, extinction notes, which in parentheses it says population dynamics. It was on week 10, posted on November 6th. So we're going to open these up. And it said in box 7. I don't know why it says 1, but it should be in box 7. So right here, are the wolves on Isle Royal becoming extinct? Hopefully you had some time to think about that. I have an idea, and probably based on our conversations, I mean, this is what usually people come up with, is that yes, they are in danger of becoming extinct. They might not be extinct right now, especially because the data is not up to date, but with only 2 living animals, they are in danger of extinction. And then we move on to, well, what about the gray wolves in general? So remember I showed you that whole, not a graph, a map of the area and how they were only now in North America. But if you've been listening to news in the past like 10 years about wolves, they actually have been like reintroduced to Yellowstone. I'm sure you guys have heard about like wolves just in like wooded up north area. So what do you guys think about gray wolves in general? Overall, I would say that they are not in danger of being extinct any longer. So I'm going to keep going with our notes. There's a few more ideas that I want to share with you all. So we're going to look at a graph about these 2 kinds of codfish. So There's a northeast stock of cod, so that is the lighter purple or reddish color. And then there's a northwest stock of cod that is in the blue or the darker shade. Overall, like thinking about this, what do you think? If the northwest stock cod goes extinct, like look, they don't have that many left. They're in the millions of tons, so it still is some. But like look, it dips down pretty low. So if those ones end up going to zero, does that mean that all cod are extinct, like all of them? Um, what about having local versus global extinction? So when a species disappears from one particular location, is it extinct? What if the location is like the size of Africa? What if one animal is left in a zoo somewhere? So depending on our definition, like maybe you guys don't think it is extinct. This graph also shows us that Atlantic cod can sometimes be difficult to see if a particular species is extinct, especially if you have like a northeast versus a northwest, like something that's super similar, and it takes a very well-trained eye to tell a difference. Different stock or populations are behaving similarly in their trend, but one is doing better than the other. So, does extinction mean that every population of that species crashes, or does it mean that only local ones are going extinct? So, these are some things to just think about in our definition. We just did that. Okay. Um, Here's another example. It's kind of a odd story, but it's a good one. Here's an example that was thought to be of an animal, sorry, that was thought to be extinct for over 150 years. So if you look, it says it was lost circa 1850, and then it was found again in 2003. So these guys hunt over open water and breed on remote Pacific islands. And no one like knowingly knew that they saw one until 2003 again. So it had been believed to be extinct, but then actually on January 25th, specifically 2003, a possible sighting was made by a man and his team close to the Mercury Islands on the peninsula of New Zealand's North Island. And it actually led to several photographs and an article being published about this bird. So they actually did photograph it and found it. And then on November 17th in 2003, while looking for another type of bird, another actual, like a separate fisherman found good photographs and video of 10 to 20 of these storm petrels off the Great Barrier Reefs and the Great Barrier Islands. So basically, a bunch of these birds then end up being found. They did capture some and release them into a similar area, and they had some radio transmitters attached so that they could watch their population. So they thought it was extinct. It was decided that it was extinct around 1850, but then it was found. Another example of a interesting story is more of a local example of the United States. It's not as fascinating as it's a plant, but it is the Mount Diablo buckwheat. And so basically, there was a graduate student who recorded the last sighting of the Mount Diablo buckwheat in 1971. And then, so I'm just skimming this article. So the first person was conducting field studies, and they didn't see any more Mount Diablo buckwheat, so they considered it extinct. And then it says that another graduate student was conducting a floristic, so they were looking at the flowers on the mountain, and they were more thoroughly searching promising areas on the mountain that hadn't gotten enough attention from others. And then he realized that he was surrounded by early blooming buckwheat. And once he realized that it was on a Mount Diablo buckwheat, that he was super shocked and, quote, pretended it wasn't there and continued with my other work because he was just in such shock that he found something that was presumably extinct on a mountain and he found it again. And this odd guy was one of my last examples, I believe. Yes. So again, it can be hard to tell when things go extinct because this was supposedly lost 66 million years ago. AKA, we've only found fossils and it was never found or seen in person when people started taking stock of what was around. So they are now found along coastlines of the Indian and Indonesian Oceans. And since there are only two species of this specific fish, both are considered threatened. It is the most endangered order of animals in the world, and the West Indian variation of this fish is critically endangered. It is just considered to be a lobed fin fish related to a lungfish, and it was in the Devonian eras. They thought it was extinct in the late Cretaceous period around 66 million years ago, but they were rediscovered in 1938 off the coast of South Africa. So if we think about that, so they used to live in the Indian Oceans, and why would anyone be looking for this fish down in South Africa? So had they always been in South Africa, or did someone just find one? So sometimes extinct species, like I showed you, can be rediscovered. So why might you think this happens? I want you to just like take a minute and think about it, and you can add it to your Google or your Doodle sheets. So it's your new ideas about extinction. So anything you learned that you found interesting or fascinating. And then we're going to move into where do these extinctions actually occur more often. So these large dots, they show you the location of bird species extinctions since 1500 all the way to 2012. Bigger circles show areas where more bird species have gone extinct. Do you see a pattern? And these are of birds that are, we are 100% certain that they are extinct. It is official. Here we talk about where species are actually going extinct, like all the way, at least in the wild. And we're not really counting zoos or anything. It's really just like if you go to these islands, you will never find them again. So hopefully you noticed that the circles are kind of, a lot of my students say they're in oceans. Well, what kind of land is in oceans? Islands. Islands are in oceans. So we noticed that extinctions occur mostly on islands, and it is way more prevalent to happen on islands. So what might this have to do with our definition of extinction? Does it have anything else to do with it? Think about it. If a species only lives on one specific place in one little tiny island, there's really only that population there in the entire world. And say there's only 1,000 of them ever, it's a lot easier to go extinct or to vanish forever if there's only 1,000 of these birds than it would be if there was 1,000,000 around the entire world. So here's actually an example. So why do things go extinct more commonly on islands? Well, what's the difference between these examples? And this is an example of an island species going extinct very quickly, and it is actually due to humans and invasive species. So this snake, the brown tree snake, was transported by humans from the nearby Admiral Islands, and someone had them as pets and then released them into the wild. And eventually, this brown tree snake was released into Guam, like I said, following World War II, and this snake likes to eat birds. So over the next 30 years after they were released, 10 of the 12 native bird species on the Guam Islands went extinct, and the remaining two species have fewer than 200 individuals remaining on the island. So then just again, I know I'm repeating myself, but why do we think species go extinct on islands? So let's write down what we've considered or found out. All right, so where do most extinctions occur? They occur mostly on islands. I'm even going to include small. And list and explain 3 reasons why extinctions could be more common here. So I listed a few, but we'll just recap quickly. They're isolated. So not many animals or people can get there, either to have the animals reproduce or people to hopefully reintroduce them or vice versa. The islands also might not have many resources. Initially, there are smaller populations. And islands are just less resistant to change, like overall. So when people come and they bring new species, it's harder for them to be able to change and adapt to a new species. So think invasive species. So then just to wrap up with unity and diversity, we took a look at the wolves and we took a look at the moose. And if we think about them, they live in unity on an island. So how are they connected? Obviously, they're different species. They're different in the wolves are the predators and the moose is the prey. They're different in how they look. They're different in their size. They're different in so many ways. Even how they live. Wolves live in packs. Moose live with just their babies until their babies are grown. But if we look, do they have any connection between unity? Like, are they related? Take a look at this graph and like seriously think about it. So as the wolf population goes up, what's going on with the moose population and why? And if a moose population goes up, what's happening to the wolves? Are they interconnected? Do they have a connection? Are they united in some way? So do the changes in one population depend or affect another? Are other factors important? You guys told me about food. Do any factors affect both populations? And what do you just think about factors? So just think about this. This is a quiz question that you either might have done or we're getting to it, depending on what day you are, A or B day. But look at the correlation. How can we connect the two? I just wanted to bring it back to unity and diversity. So instead of like tracking our individuals over time, we track species over time and just like putting them all together. Sorry, that was kind of a weird ending to this whole unit, but we kind of wrapped it up. We started with the island and then we wrapped it up with the island again. So I hope everybody learned something, at least about islands or extinction or something interesting from this unit. And I will give you that information about what's going on with the wolves on Isle Royal now, because I know there were only 2 species left when I left you, and so I will give you that information.